to Point Black, live from STL. STL.
The real STL.
I'm Adolphus Pruitt.
And I'm the Reverend Darrell Gray.
And we got on the phone our East Coast correspondent, attorney Theresa Hassler. I keep trying to call you somebody else, T.
I know, and I don't
I don't
understand
know.
that. And
I
people
don't
need
know either.
and people need to know that Miss Theresa is Point Black's East Coast East Coast co-host.
Oh,
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
like that.
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
the upgrade.
yeah.
I like the
Well,
upgrade.
you've earned
Yeah.
it. You've earned it. I mean,
It's about time. It's about time.
well, Adolphus
Does
had
that
on the scale.
does that mean we have to give her a raise?
We're gonna give a double what
Yeah,
we're giving her.
multiply,
Hey BJ, we're
multiply.
gonna give a double what we're giving her now.
Oh no!
Oh, we're gonna increase.
Oh,
We're gonna
no.
double her pay. Yeah, okay.
Increase
Got
my
you.
stress level.
Well, if we doing that, I'm gonna triple it.
Oh, okay. That's light work for you. Tripling my stress.
You
Yes.
already
Hey,
know.
hey, and I'm so glad we got you on here, Theresa. I'm just so glad because the conversation today is one that is serious in a way. You know, it is amazing how when private industry fails or discriminates, that they put together a safety net
Wow.
to catch those folks who private industry has discriminated against. And you expect when you hit the safety net that it would catch you. But in this case, a tornado comes through St. Louis. And while it exposed the inside of buildings by blowing out all of the bricks and
Right,
windows.
right.
While you can look, ladies and gentlemen, you can stand on the corner on the street and look through somebody's house.
Right.
Because they have no more walls, maybe few interior walls and things like that. But a tornado comes through and blows through there, and it exposes one other thing, not just those people's house, but it exposes that we have a safety net that is really not a safety net.
Well, okay. Mr. Reese, he's going to explain that. So,
A lot of holes in the net.
right, there's a lot of holes in the net. So you've got a corporation. In this case, the insurance companies. So you're saying that Pruitt, that when you create the corporation, then automatically there is a safety net that is created in the event that the corporation doesn't do what it's supposed to do?
Yeah, they went further. So what happened was, let's just I'm giving you Missouri as an instance. When all of the insurance companies in the state of Missouri that want to do business and sell policies in the state of Missouri must be licensed through the state,
Right.
through the Missouri Department of Insurance.
Okay.
And they are also must, by law, become a part of an insurance syndicate called the Missouri Fair Plan, or Missouri Property Insurance Placement Facility, which short is the Missouri the Fair Plan. And collectively, they are to put in 10% equal to their percentage of the marketplace. So say if I own 20% if I sell 20% of all the insurance policies that are sold in the state of Missouri,
Right.
I'm obligated to put an equal amount of dollars, technically, 20% of that amount, into this pool, this syndicate pool that everybody has to put into, called the Fair Plan.
Okay.
And then this Fair Plan is supposed to offer insurance policies as a last resort to people who I wouldn't sell to in the regular marketplace. Now, to make it easier for you is the same insurance companies that deny you insurance or standard insurance,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
that forces you to go to the Fair Plan, are the same insurance companies who make up the FAIR Plan. Now, here's where it gets tricky.
Gotcha.
Here's where it gets tricky.
Okay.
If I deny you insurance, ladies and gentlemen, I know you've heard about insurance companies taking drones and flying over their insurer's house. If they think the roof is bad, they send you a notice and say, we're dropping your insurance because of your roof. Now, if you go ahead and repair the roof, we may keep you. But if you don't, we dropping you because you ain't doing your deferred maintenance. Well, the standard insurance company that you go to flies over your house and says, I'm dropping you, or I won't insure you. Then you're supposed to turn around and go to the FAIR Plan to get insurance. And when the FAIR Plan now tells you, no, we won't insure you for the same reasons that the standard people would not give you insurance, and these are the same people.
Right.
Well, it's a racket.
Well, hey, Theresa, this is like you go to the bank and the bank deny you. Then you go to the finance company who's charging double the rate that the bank is charging, and they deny you. Then you go to the loan shark who's charging you the same amount that you borrow, and then the loan shark denies you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call the fair Plan people loan. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying that it. And as Pruitt said, this is the insurance corporation. These are the companies that created the FAIR Plan because they already knew we're not going to cover y'all. So, but so that we don't get in trouble, we're going to dump 20% over here for y'all that we know we're not going to insure. Pruitt, did you ask them if the interest for the FAIR Plan, if that was comparable to?
I did not, but ladies and gentlemen, so the director of the FAIR Plan, here's what he wrote. We asked him in writing. We said, let's make sure we understand what it is that's going on. And he wrote and says that there is, he says, if you qualify, he says, applicants come to us through a licensed agent to procure insurance policy if they have been unable to get it in the normal insurance market. If they qualify, we offer them an insurance quote just like any other insurance carrier. And if they accept and pay the premium, they have entered into an insurance contract just with us, just like any other coverage. Our coverages are very basic, and we do not sell a standards homeowners rather than a dwelling fire policy. He said, then he went on about the tornadoes and said, we fully intend to honor the terms of our insurance contract for those who have coverage for damage from tornadoes. I would tell you that we have quite a few fire only insurance policy on our books that cover only fire losses to property. So there may be a few people who have tornado damage that do not have coverage for that event. Many of the properties on our books have substantial deferred maintenance with roofs, gutters, tuck pointing, so did not qualify for our wind and hail endorsement or apply for fire awning. Now, what he basically said is this.
I heard what he said. What he said?
He said, we came and looked at your house, and we said, well, we think that because you have some deferred maintenance on it, we ain't gonna sell you no wind and fire, but the wind and hail and damage, a tornado, nothing. But we'll sell you some fire insurance. And people bought the only thing they would sell to them. So now we have people who technically are underinsured,
right?
Because the safety net would not sell them the insurance that they needed for this particular instance, but we'll sell them fire. So if they house caught fire, they're good. But I'm going to only sell you some insurance to help you if your house burn up.
Natural disasters don't count.
Yeah, wind and tornadoes, and we in Tornado Alley.
What you think, Miss Theresa? What are your thoughts?
I mean, wow. Well, I think, I looked at first of all, some of the great research that Pruitt has done in his capacity with the St. Louis NAACP and the white papers and the memorandum, of course, talking to relatives who have been directly impacted. And it's a travesty, but that's a gross understatement. And unfortunately, throughout American history and the capitalistic society that we exist, there has been a history of companies that create problems and then get paid to fix those same problems. And this is, to me, a perfect example of that, layered with the history of what we, a lot of us, most of us know about, the history of redlining. For those of us who don't, the historical inequity that was made under President Roosevelt, who was often praised for his, accomplishments after the Depression,
Right.
as far as economic revitalization. But there are also some racist policies that he enacted, and one of them was allowing banks to exempt neighborhoods, blocks, individual homes where there were immigrants, where there were Black people, where there were people who were deemed undesirable, preventing them from obtaining mortgages. And so those same areas throughout St. Louis, throughout the United States, that historically have not been invested in because companies were legally allowed to not provide mortgages for people who wanted to buy homes in those areas, are the same areas now, as Pruitt said, are the most vulnerable to environmental catastrophe.
Hey, T, hold that thought 1 minute. I hate to cut you off, but we need to do a quick break. We'll be back with more on Point Blank. And we are back. Daryl,
Well,
did you heard T?
I mean, I understand, and I want Theresa to finish that point. But, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about insurance. We're talking about a tornado that hit St. Louis several days ago and devastated communities, devastated lives. Lives were lost. 5 people died in the tornado. We had several others injured. Over 5,000 buildings destroyed, estimated $1.6 billion, and that number might go up. We're still waiting on the president to declare that area a disaster area so that we can get some federal help. And we're talking about insurance. Pruitt, I agree with you, Theresa. I think that the information, the white paper from the NAACP is very illuminating. Like I said, the structures, but he talks about the insurance companies, and you said something, and I know you're going to elaborate on that. When Roosevelt did the New Deal and everything was created after the Depression, obviously, Theresa, he had to make another deal. He had to make a backroom deal with the corporations in order for the corporations to support his New Deal plan. In order for them to bankroll, because the government didn't bankroll the entire New Deal plan. Corporations did, be it Ford or Carnegie or U.S. Steel or all the rest of those guys. They had to buy into that. And so doesn't the same premise hold true? The insurance companies say, wait a minute, we want to operate in the state of Missouri. We want to bring business to the state of Missouri by way of the insurance corporation, but there's got to be a trade-off to protect us. Isn't that just good business? Are the insurance companies just doing good business?
Well, who determines whose life is more valuable than somebody else's?
Wow.
So if the basis of your question is, well, corporations are private entities and they're nameless, faceless companies and their whole goal is to turn profit, that's fine. But if the basis for their algorithm, if the basis for them determining what to fund or not to fund is rooted in racial bias, then they're not robotic, right? There's still a human element at play. And just to pivot just really quickly before I finish my original point, the fact that one of the things that is being unearthed now in the midst of this horrendous disaster in St. Louis is what a lot of us have known is the value of homes in North St. Louis City. There's the Mississippi mud brick is a type of brick you can only get in certain areas, one of them being North City, because of the history that St. Louis had with the Mississippi River and trade. And so there's a particular type of brick that you can only get that has been around this area for at least a century or more. And a lot of the homes that were destroyed are made of that brick. There was a time, this is before when I was still in St. Louis working with Pruitt on some other endeavors, and you would have people going around, remember Pruitt, and they would spray their pickup truck orange, and they put on a vest, and they would literally start stealing houses. And how do you steal a house in broad daylight, right?
Wow.
You pretend that you work for the city, and you start taking bricks off of those LCRA houses brick by brick, and you sell those bricks, right? Because who doesn't want a nice brick home? So it's beyond the copper pipes, it's beyond the lead window panes, it's the bricks themselves.
Gotcha.
And so again, history has told us as a people that we are the least, but we know, as we learn about ourselves, that anybody who says we're the least, then we have to be the utmost.
Right.
And so the value of the property that has been destroyed is extremely valuable. So it would behoove them to want it to be extremely vulnerable, to want to leave people in the situation where they are now, where they cannot rebuild, where they cannot insure, where they will abandon their property. To my original point, when it comes to redlining in those areas and other parts of the country, because there's a slippery slope of divestment, right? If mortgage companies and lenders were already allowed to deny and incentivize for denying mortgages for people who wanted to buy homes in those areas, then the next step is, why should we invest at all, right? It's almost like putting a mark on something, and for decades later there's still this mark, this undesirable mark. So there's been a consistent systemic lack of investment. That is why under the previous presidential administration, other administrations too, there has been attempts to invest in climate change. And not just lakes, rivers, and oceans, which are extremely important, but Black communities across the country are extremely susceptible to climate change. I think people started seeing that after Hurricane Katrina, right? But it is the air quality. It is the lack of greenery. It is the lack of trees. It is all of those things. And so we're now in an administration where they have one of the first things they did, in the first, not even 100 days, I'd say the first 5 days, was take away federal funding for climate programs, right? Not just because they wanted to overfish salmon in the China Sea, but because they did not want Black people to have access to solar panels, right? They didn't want to invest in planting trees. And it was specifically designed to continue to hurt our community. And so this is unfortunately just another revelation in a history of horrible racist practices. And we're seeing it play out in North St. Louis City.
Well, and the unique thing though is that by law, it is stated by law that all insurance companies have to become a part of this FAIR plan. So they put together this nonprofit that manages this thing, and the governing committee over the program.
Right. I was going to ask you about
the
that.
governing committee. There's 3 people appointed by it's 13 people on this committee. There's 3 people appointed by the Missouri Department of Insurance. The other 10 are appointed by the insurance company. So
you got the wolf that's over the chicken coop.
The same insurance companies that turn you down, that make you have to go to the FAIR plan in the first place.
I'm a farmer, and I'm telling the fox, do you mind looking out for my chicken coop for a little while? But like you said,
that's amazing.
But it is, and Pruitt, as Theresa talked about the discriminatory practices, because, okay, the tornado has struck. and people are trying to, people are rebuilding their lives, and no pun intended, brick piece by piece, brick by brick, board by board. And like Pruitt said, you look at it, 70% of folk uninsured. 70%. So even though we talk underinsured. So even though we talk about the insurance companies, there is a huge amount of folk that are looking and saying, there's no help in sight through it. And particularly when you talk about the discriminatory practices that Theresa talked about, barrier on top of barrier on top of barrier.
Well, it gets a little worse.
Oh, Jesus, Pruitt.
Because some of the ones, let's be clear, some of the ones who are insured and insured for tornado damage, according to them, some of them are looking out for, or the insurance company say, okay, we ready, go get you a contractor.
Right.
And the contractors are saying, no, we ain't coming into your neighborhood and do no work, even though you can pay for it, even though the insurance companies can pay for it. We're not coming to your neighborhood. Then there was another young lady, I don't know, T, if you seen it on social media, on the news, she said she bought her house 19 months ago.
Right.
Tried to get insurance. No one went insured, not even under the FIR plan.
Wow.
There's deferred maintenance. So imagine somebody coming in, and here's my theory.
Now, who do they complain to when that happens, Pruitt? Who do they complain to?
Well, see, because they are separate, the state should be the one. The Department of Insurance should be the one you complain to.
Okay.
But since the FIR plan has some independence, and on the Department of Insurance only had 3 votes out of that on that board of 13. Right. But here's the thing. Here's my question. Wow. If my house is livable, how can it be uninsurable?
But who's living in it?
That's right.
That's the only thing that's making a difference.
That's what it's. Who's in the house?
Who's living in it?
Yeah, right. Because if the city says this house is safe enough for me to live in,
right?
Why can't it be unsafe or too risky for the safety plan? Because I keep getting back to the point that the FIR plan, now, ladies and gentlemen, they have FIR plan in 33 states in this country. 33 states. Out of the 33 states, only 4 of them have this issue of saying we won't insure you if you have some deferred maintenance you had to do to your house. Yeah. Florida, California, Hawaii, and Missouri.
And Florida, California, Hawaii, because of tornadoes, because of gotcha. And Missouri, hurricanes and tsunamis and that kind of thing. But Missouri, because like you said, we're in that tornado alley. So, Pruitt, the other thing that I was impressed with, because
let me say this. Let me say something. I don't. When you group states together like that, it's almost like that old from Sesame Street, one of these, I don't remember the name of the song. You got 4 things and one of them don't belong, right? So one of them is doing their own thing.
Right.
We can't be any more susceptible to tornadoes than Kansas, right? We can't be any more susceptible
or Oklahoma.
to, right? So
and Texas,
Oklahoma.
Right.
So my question is, when you look at that, I wouldn't even defer it to we're tornado alley. Where the tornado hit this last time, there hadn't been a tornado in that part of North St. Louis in 60 years, and prior to that, it was like 1920. It was 100 years ago, right? At least, especially that level of devastation. So we're not like Florida, where hurricanes are run of the mill, right? We're not California, where earthquakes happen frequently, right? We're not Hawaii, where we're literally surrounded by water,
right?
So you have to ask yourself, one of the things when you talk about the privatization of insurance and how could the state's governing authority allow them to operate independently or quasi-independently, it's lobbying. I used to lobby. I mean, it's lobbying. Who pays?
Of course.
Paying?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
right. So, but I'm saying let's just call it what it is, right? It's there's not any justifiable reason that makes Missouri so exempt from an environmental perspective that it should be grouped in with those other states, other than the fact that you have to track the elected officials, you have to attract the money, follow the money, always, the industries, right? Every state has some sort of wacky law on the books. And the wackier the law, especially if you tie it to a trade group, I guarantee you it's because that trade group is good at lobbying.
Right.
Do you understand? I'm not going to get down that slippery slope, but it really is a matter of 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 that,
But you know,
right? You
Pruitt,
have to follow the money.
and like I said, and even with the information and had this conversation with some folk today. Now we've got to begin not only the recovery and the rebuilding, but when you look, Pruitt, at the discrepancies that you've seen, when you look at the discrimination, when you look at, be it institutional or systemic or whatever, at least one of the things that the NAACP has done. So when we talk about lobbying on one side, Theresa, and these insurance companies and all these corporations, and that's what I meant by the New Deal and Roosevelt and the corporations, there was, as Donald Trump would say, some quid pro quo. They were saying, okay, we're going to support this, and we're going to have our legislators support this, because corporations own legislators too, even in Jefferson City. And so they said, okay, what is the compromise? And the compromise was, Pruitt, you got 13 people on a board, and none of them are really community. It's a nonprofit with a governing committee made up of insurance companies and insurance agents, and 3 are appointed by the state, the insurance department, and the other 10 by the same industry that you're trying to
it's like
oversight. Right.
It's like telling the banks you come up with the laws for CRA, for community reinvestment.
Right. But at least you have some solutions. And I think that's the other thing. It goes to Theresa's point. I think that we need to begin to lobby. And I mean, so what? People are going to say, well, we don't have the money that they have and blah, blah, blah. But the NAACP typically, Pruitt, in all facets of government, NAACP, I don't know if you guys use the word lobby or advocate, but y'all do that.
Yeah, and we definitely. But the funny thing about this is that we've been chasing this rabbit hole since September, August, and September of last year. So
pre-tornado,
pre-tornado since over 6-7 months ago, we've been saying, wait a minute, there's a gap here, and insurance, and the sad thing is that we asked both the Fair Plan and the Missouri Department of Insurance, give us information on how many people are uninsured in North St. Louis.
Right.
Give us the ones who are underinsured.
Wow.
Give us the information, and give us information on which insurance companies are denying them insurance. That's how we can determine if some redlining is going on. And of course, they came back and said, we don't have anything responsive to your request. I guess you don't.
We can't.
They said, well, they pointed the finger at the other, right? And we don't keep data like that, and this doesn't fall under the Sunshine Law, and this isn't applicable.
Right.
They were trying to, razzle dazzle, Scooby Doo you, right? Confuse you with a whole bunch of words and stuff. I mean, wait a minute,
Theresa. They were trying to. I understood the razzle dazzle. She said they were trying to Scooby Doo you.
Yeah, I saw the letters they sent back. It's the type of letters that they would never want to see the light of day. So I'm just saying, you do what you will. But I think that now is the time, and I appreciate, where you're going with that also, Rev, is when it comes to the advocacy. Unfortunately, so many people are in horrendous situations. The only way to move is forward. Because now so many of those homes and so much of their property is vulnerable. The creation of the Fair Plan was the inception was based off of riots, right? All these race riots that were happening. and a way to protect property, because in the 60s they were, we had a lot of riots going on in different places. So that was the basis for the FAIR Plan, right? Was to insure property that would normally be deemed undesirable or uninsurable as a last resort. But it was based solely on those particular areas being vulnerable to race riots, right? So now we're going back to race again. And redlining is one thing, right? But what's happening now, when you start talking less about mortgage companies and banks giving mortgages in certain areas, is blue lining, right? So blue lining is really specific to what we're talking about with the insurance companies, right? And a lot of the information that you were seeking to get from those organizations is based off of a concept called blue lining, right? Where you have similar activity, but it's primarily industries like insurance, right? That skip over certain houses, that skip over certain neighborhoods, that use some sort of false justification for not providing coverage.
So,
right?
So I was going to say, so let's I'm going to just shift for one quick minute, because the question is if they won't insure them for deferred maintenance. Now, we have a whole community over there. The storm season is not over. This is May.
Right.
And if you, I don't know if you recall from the news, but we even had tornadoes that hit the St. Louis area in November and December.
And back in, what was it, April? Back in April, yeah.
So it's not over. And so the question is who should be responsible for one, assisting people with the deferred maintenance? Because listen, nobody's sitting there, they need a roof, and they won't put one on, they letting it rain on them on purpose. More likely than not, it is cost prohibitive for them to do the deferred maintenance on these houses because they're older houses. So who should be bridging that gap to say that either one, we're going to force the FAIR Plan to insure you and subsidize your insurance payments so that you can afford it, or two, we're gonna help with the deferred maintenance so that your home is insurable by the FAIR Plan, and then you pay your premium that way. But they give the impression that these uninsured, you just have a whole swath of the black community that's uninsured because they don't want to pay for their insurance. When in this instance, that's not the case. In this instance, you have a vast majority of them are uninsured or underinsured because the regular insurance agency or the FAIR Plan would not sell them a policy because of deferred maintenance, or it would sell them a policy, but would be for fire only.
But I think you answered. The question too.
Or they wouldn't renew the policy.
Or they wouldn't renew it. Exactly.
But I think, Pruitt, you when you said what do we do based upon what we've seen. So this is the problem, and this tornado has exposed the problem. Now you and the NAACP and others, you reached out months ago before this tornado.
Yeah.
So you saw it. You got it. And so now the tornado has exposed it. We got to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of Point Blank.
And we are back. And you know, T. Darryl, this last portion of the show, here's what we need to talk about. Because when we ran the numbers based on the 2023 values of those properties in the north side of town, we estimated that their value is like $400 to $600 million, over $500 million. Wow. That's what this property worth. And the issue is this, like that lady who said she couldn't get insurance, she just bought a house. Her largest asset was that house. The thing that her wealth, the tornado blew her wealth away.
Right.
That was her wealth. That was she owned that house.
Right.
They had another lady in the Ville said that was her mother's house and the family been there, and now it's gone. That is this generational wealth we talk about. Yeah. And so being able to pass that on to the next generation, to their kids and their kids' kids and whoever, the loss, not only do the insurance company rob them of the safety net, but it robbed their future generations of wealth.
But you said something too. I mean, moving for solutions. You talk about insurance reform. You talk about expanding the FAIR Plan coverage, mandating wind tornado coverage for all applicants. You talk about subsidizing premiums. You talk about transparency. I want to go back to a question that I think T was saying. But who's going to carry that flag? I mean, we see this. All these things have been exposed. Adolphus, is it the city of St. Louis's responsibility? Is it progressive advocacy groups? Is it the NAACP?
It's all of ours, but
okay.
And we've written the mayor, and I don't say that to say that the mayor is not performing well or anything like that. Right. No. The process is
right.
We just like we wrote the Department of Insurance, we've CC'd state senators, and we also wrote the mayor. But a lot of it does fall on the city only because, and the city should be upset with the state and the FAIR Plan,
right.
Because when they fail to insure these people and this damage comes, it is robbing the city of potential residents who have to leave.
Exactly.
The houses have to be torn down. It robs them of the tax base.
The tax base, that's right.
You know what I'm talking about? And in most cases, the city, like they're doing right now, had to come up with emergency funds and had to mobilize the community to go in there to help, when in some cases the insurance companies could have provided that.
Right.
So the city, at the end of the day, the individual property owners and their future generations are robbed of economic wealth, but that economic disparity hits the city also in the long run. Right. And so the city should be saying, why can't my people, why can't the buildings in my municipality get insurance from the safety net if the regular insurance companies ain't gonna do it?
And Theresa, as we talk about corporate influence over legislation, be it local, state, federal, whatever, governments, I mean, city, municipalities have lobbyists too. And municipalities on a frequent basis, depending upon what the issue is, Theresa Pruitt, will go to a state capitol or go to Congress and lobby on behalf of what is in the best interest of their municipality. So Pruitt's point is an excellent point. Everybody has some skin in the game here. And I'm just hoping, I mean, and that, we talk about insurance. Pruitt, you mentioned the whole idea of combat contractor redlining. And one of the solutions, you talk about incentives and minority women, Black entrepreneur support. You help to move that in St. Louis County. Now, are we going back to the drawing board? Are we going back to the table on this? Because if we're talking about rebuilding North St. Louis, if we talk about recovery, we definitely want, you talk about black wealth, we want economic development, but black employment is going to be part of that too, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Economically, it is an economic engine that has come to a stall due to the storm, and normally you should be able to push the button and restart it if they are properly insured.
Right.
That's the income. That is the dollars that come back into the community, because these people are paying it out in premiums. Those are the dollars that come back to help rebuild that's being lost. Yeah. Because like I said, those things are valued at collectively $400-600 million. Right. If they valued at that, if they were properly insured and the insurance company's covering it, imagine those sort of dollars coming back into those neighborhoods. And And that's why the city should be just as upset as anybody, because the last thing the city need that right now. I ran some numbers. LRA, the city owned the ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. The largest property owner, especially in North St. Louis, is the city of St. Louis.
That's right. LRA. That's right.
LRA.
That's right.
And the vast majority of those properties, if there are buildings, they look like the tornado hit them before the tornado came.
That's true.
They already look like that.
Right.
So now imagine when the tornado comes and you drive down the street, it's hard to tell an LRA building different from one that was hit by the tornado, because they all look the same.
They all look the
They
same.
all look the same. And the city had an obligation to tear down or maintain those LRA buildings. Now you're gonna go through these buildings where the insurance company has failed these people. So now we're gonna have some parts of North St. Louis gonna look like the streets used to look like down there by NGA.
You're right. And that's the thing, Theresa, too, if you think about it, and Prue is right, and this is not ever to take lightly, what has happened. But Prue is absolutely right. Prior to the tornado, there were certain parts of North St. Louis that looked pretty bad, and as Pruitt said, many of those houses were either LRAs or people who owned those houses who lived out of state or absentee landlords, and so that was the other reality. And so now, as Pruitt said, we're looking at rebuilding. Every mayor that I've known, and I've only known about 3 or 4 mayors, Pruitt's known many more of St. Louis, have all talked about what North St. Louis needs. St. Louis is disadvantaged. St. Louis is this. St. Louis is that. This tornado now has forced government to rebuild North St. Louis.
No, it hasn't.
Okay. All right.
What you said, T?
Okay,
So
maybe.
let me say something.
Go ahead,
Come
T.
on.
Come on. I'm not a visitor. So I grew up in North St. Louis.
Right.
I'm intimately familiar with the way North St. Louis has changed, how it has evolved. My mother's from the area, right? Like North, I got it. I'm on it. Okay. How the houses have looked. Pruitt, you ain't got to explain, right? How these things have looked all up and down Martin Luther King and Marcus and going on them side streets and all of that. I know this, right? Also, in work that I did when I was working in Missouri, I'm very familiar with the Missouri Development Finance Board, Missouri Housing Development Corporation, how these tax credits work, how people sit on this property. They'll let it be derelict, buy up blocks and blocks at a time and sit on it. It's an investment for them. There's no blind ignorance by local elected officials or your state elected officials, and they just twiddling their thumbs and I don't know what to do. And it is very calculated. All of this is very calculated, and it's been decades in the making. People have been waiting on this moment. They've been waiting on this moment. They love the fact that you can't tell the difference between a house that was abandoned and a house that now looks abandoned because it's been hit by a tornado. Because somebody who is already very tied into LRA and their processes, how they blight things, right, for another cause, how they enact eminent domain to build, in the name of universities, and corporations, right? They're very savvy. We're the ones that are sitting around waiting on them. They're not waiting. They're waiting on us to have a demise. Right. So I personally, maybe just me, because I've been out for too long. With what I know and what I think as well, I'm not deferring to our local elected officials, the new ones or the old ones, right? To take a risk on maybe not being reelected, to take a risk on not getting that campaign check, to take a risk on not being popular and actually do the right thing when they're in a position to do it the first time, or at the very least say something, right? But everybody, unfortunately, not everybody, most people have a cost. Most people have a price. And some people have already paid the price. right? And now we're paying the price because they sold themselves for a price.
But
But I'm
Daryl's
gonna
gonna
leave that right.
Daryl's gonna take us out. T. We hear you, but we're
Uh-uh.
running out of time.
Listen, we're going to
Daryl,
leave, but
take-
listen, you couldn't have said it better. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for speaking that truth. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for this hour of Point Black. Continue to tune in next week.